The story begins at a dock in Yokohama, Japan, where a shipping container suddenly topples over, spilling its contents, logs of red sandalwood, the most expensive wood in the world. As a result, the dock workers immediately report the incident to their boss, a mafia leader who had purchased the wood. Moments later, people around were stunned to discover an Indian man still alive inside the container. Given that the journey from India to Japan takes an entire month, 30 days, it is nothing short of a mystery how this man survived. The mafia boss, skeptical and alarmed, orders his men to capture the man and uncover his true identity. The man is revealed to be Pushpa, who has come to Japan with a singular purpose: to collect the unpaid money owed to him. The mafia boss, confident in his numerical advantage, chooses to confront him without realizing that Pushpa is a man of unwavering focus, commitment, and an unbreakable will, qualities that make him a formidable opponent even against hardened criminals. Back in India, deep in the forest that serve as the prime source of high-quality red sandalwood, Bungver, the local police chief and Pushpa's longtime adversary, is on a mission. Disguised as a laborer, Bungver infiltrates the operations to locate where Pushpa's men are cutting and loading the precious wood. Once he has pinpointed the location, Bungver immediately contacts his team, launching a large-scale raid that results in the arrest of 230 workers. Among them is a young man who is said to be married that very night. Upon learning of the arrest, Pushpa, who has returned to India, wastes no time. Accompanied by his loyal men, he sets off to secure the young man's release. When he arrives at the police station, the officers are left speechless as Pushpa disregards protocol, enforcing his own authority and freeing the groom-to-be. However, his demeanor quickly shifts to anger when he notices wounds on the young man's body. To his horror, Pushpa realizes that all the laborers have suffered the same fate, having been subjected to brutal torture at the hands of Bungver. In an unexpected move, Pushpa issues an ultimatum, forcing all the police inspectors into early retirement. He even compensates them fully, covering their remaining salaries, pensions, and bribes they might have otherwise earned. By the time Bungver and his two subordinates arrive at the station, they are too late. The entire office has been emptied, leaving no trace of their men. A few days later, Pushpa is seen living a happily married life with the woman of his life, Shravali. On this particular day, their town is hosting a distinguished guest, the central minister, a high-ranking government official who, incidentally, had once received financial support for his political party from Pushpa. In recognition of their past dealings, the minister extends an invitation to Pushpa, making him an honored guest at the event. Not long after, Pushpa arrives, accompanied by Siddhappa, the Speaker of Parliament and a mastermind behind the red sandalwood smuggling syndicate. However, during the group photo session, Pushpa experiences an unexpected slight. The central minister, fearing public scrutiny, refuses to be photographed with him, worried that the image might go viral. This blatant act of disrespect wounds Pushpa's pride, prompting him to leave the room, choosing instead to wait outside for Siddhappa. Shortly after Siddhappa stepped out, Pushpa expressed his disappointment. He was not upset about being insulted, humiliated, or denied a photo with the central minister, but rather because he could not fulfill his wife Shravali's request to take a picture with him. In a surprising turn, Pushpa, following his own set of rules, proposed an idea to make Siddhappa the new central minister, replacing the arrogant incumbent. When asked how much money Siddhappa would need to secure the position, he estimated a minimum of 100 crore for campaign expenses, bribery, and other necessities. Without hesitation, Pushpa offered him 500 crores to ensure his victory. As a first step, Siddhappa approached Veera, the party leader, to seek his support. Initially, Veera refused upon realizing that Pushpa was backing Siddhappa. However, when Pushpa presented him with a couch stuffed with cash, Veera changed his stance and pledged full support for Siddhappa in the upcoming elections. To recover the syndicate's funds spent on bribes, Pushpa had no choice but to increase the price of his red sandalwood. He then met with an international distributor to negotiate a massive deal. When Pushpa announced the price hike per ton of red sandalwood, the distributor laughed, boasting about having many contacts willing to sell at lower rates. However, when the distributor called his associates one by one, he discovered that all of them first consulted Pushpa. as he was the sole supplier for all smugglers in India. With the deal sealed, Pushpa quickly mobilized the entire smuggling syndicate to gather the required stock. He now wielded power akin to a supreme ruler, acquiring fleets of large trucks, manpower, and all necessary resources to achieve his goals. Word of this massive operation soon reached Bungver, who intercepted a syndicate member during a delivery. As a result, Bungver burned all the trucks and threw the captured syndicate member off a bridge. The gruesome death sent waves of fear through the syndicate. Many members feared for their lives if they continued following Pushpa. This news reached Siddhappa, who immediately suspected Bungver was behind the attack. Wasting no time, Siddhappa rushed to the police station, urging Bungver and Pushpa to make peace. If Bungver still harbored resentment over the humiliation he suffered before, Siddhappa stripped himself on the spot to show it was no big deal. Despite Siddhappa's efforts, Bungver refused to make peace unless Pushpa publicly apologized in front of everyone. Only then would Bungver agree to a truce and stop interfering with the ongoing wood shipments. Meanwhile, at the syndicate's headquarters, Pushpa had no intention of apologizing to Bungver, except for the fact that his wife supported Siddhappa's request. However, rather than accepting a sincere apology, Bungver secretly recorded Pushpa's words as evidence to humiliate him later. As Pushpa prepared to leave, intoxicated from drinking, he suddenly turned back, deciding to teach Bungver a lesson. A fierce confrontation ensued, nearly escalating into a shootout. Eventually, Pushpa and Bungver struck a deal. If Bungver could seize even a single log of red sandalwood, Pushpa would step down and return to being a laborer. However, if Bungver failed, he would have to accept a transfer to another city. The following night, Bungver coordinated with Central Police forces to block the bridge commonly used by Pushpa's convoy. After hours of waiting, he realized Pushpa had not taken the usual route. Instead, Pushpa's men transported the shipment via a dried-up riverbed to reach their destination. Upon discovering this, Bungver and his team launched a pursuit. But Pushpa had anticipated this and devised two countermeasures, using a herd of elephants to obstruct the path and bribing dam officials to release water, flooding the river. Bungver was not one to give up so easily. Determined, he jumped out of his vehicle and took an alternative route on foot. Just as he reached the road where Pushpa's trucks were expected to pass, he spotted a group of villagers traveling by horse-drawn carts. Seizing the opportunity, Bungver used them to block the trucks, successfully confiscating all of Pushpa's goods. Proud of his victory, Bungver gave a brief interview to reporters. However, he remained unaware that the seized wood was not genuine red sandalwood, but rather teak wood, a type that merely resembled red sandalwood due to its outer coloration. Bungver was left in shock when he realized that Pushpa had already delivered the real red sandalwood to its intended destination. The horse-drawn carts he had intercepted the previous night were, in fact, part of Pushpa's master plan. Each cart was constructed from genuine red sandalwood, but had been painted with a temporary dye that could easily be washed off. His entire operation had been in vain. Despite this, Bungver was not ready to admit defeat. He brought back a single wooden cart from the previous night's raid, believing it fulfilled the terms of his agreement with Pushpa. If he could confiscate even a single block of red sandalwood, Pushpa would have to step down. But Pushpa, always one step ahead, had anticipated this. Beneath the cart lay a concealed explosive, ready to be detonated at any moment. A few days later, during a grand festival, Pushpa received joyful news. His wife, Shravali, was pregnant. Overcome with emotion, he was both thrilled and deeply moved. On the other hand, Pushpa's niece, Kaveri, was being harassed by a group of unruly young men dressed in festival attire. Just as they were about to commit the act against Kaveri, Pushpa, dressed as a deity for the festival, intervened. Without hesitation, he ruthlessly beat the troublemakers, ensuring his niece's safety. Shortly afterward, Mohan, Kaveri's biological father, and Pushpa's half-brother arrived at the place. Since their confrontation in the past, Mohan had always held contempt for Pushpa. Instead of showing gratitude for saving his daughter's honor, he scolded Pushpa, branding him a disgrace and illegitimate son born of an unrecognized mother. Enraged, Pushpa was on the verge of attacking Mohan, but Shravali and his mother intervened, calming him down. As punishment, the young troublemakers had half of their heads shaved and were paraded through the village in disgrace. However, the look in their eyes made it clear they still harbored resentment towards Kaveri and were likely plotting revenge. Meanwhile, the shipment of red sandalwood successfully reached the distributor's warehouse. In return, the payment, an enormous sum in cash, was delivered in a massive container. Not wanting to attract attention, Pushpa discreetly transferred the entire sum to Siddhappa, who would use it for his election campaign, bribes, and other political maneuverings. As a result, Siddhappa secured victory and was elected as the new central minister, gaining control over nearly 29 states in India. However, instead of heading directly to his new office or addressing the public, his first destination was Pushpa's home. His purpose was simple: to fulfill Shivali's long-held wish of taking a photograph with the central minister. On the other hand, Bungver, unable to cope with his defeat, descended into depression. At the warehouse filled with Sandra wood, his supposed triumph, his mind snapped. Overwhelmed by his failure, he set fire to the entire stockpile, perishing in a massive explosion. With his most formidable adversary gone, Pushpa continued to thrive, his influence growing stronger than ever. Siddhappa, now the central minister, became his most powerful ally, ensuring his dominance over the red sandalwood business remained unchallenged. Unexpectedly, Pushpa faced another crisis when his niece, Kaveri, was kidnapped by the same gang of thugs from before. They demanded a ransom of 200 crore from Mohan. Despite having insulted Pushpa in the past, Mohan had no choice but to seek his help. But Pushpa was only concerned about Kaveri and immediately set out to rescue her. News of Pushpa's relentless pursuit reached Siddhappa and Veera, who began to feel that Pushpa was growing too reckless and acting without regard for authority. Meanwhile, the mastermind behind Kaveri's abduction was revealed to be none other than Bugga, Veera's own nephew. Bugga was notorious for his delinquent behavior, gambling, womanizing, and even recently released from prison after an assault conviction. Despite his despicable nature, he was the last remaining heir of Veera's family, making his life valuable and worth protecting at all costs. Later, Siddhappa called Pushpa, urging him to stop his hunt for Bugga, but Pushpa refused to listen. He was determined to get Kaveri back, no matter the consequences. Shortly after ending the call with Siddhappa, Pushpa received another call, this time from Bugga himself. Brazen and audacious, Bugga demanded an increased ransom of 10,000 crore. He also insisted that Pushpa come alone. Without hesitation, Pushpa agreed. The exchange was set to take place at an abandoned building on a hill. As planned, Pushpa arrived in a helicopter, dropping the money from above before descending with a gun in hand. However, Bugga had no intention of simply handing Kaveri over. His true motive was revenge. He wanted to humiliate and destroy Pushpa for the beating he had suffered that fateful night. Soon, several of Bugga's old comrades arrived, thugs who had also been beaten by Pushpa in the past. While they initially displayed fear, it was all an act. They had come to exact their own revenge. Having learned from their past encounters, they quickly overpowered Pushpa, binding his hands and feet to ensure he couldn't fight back. Then, they took turns beating him mercilessly. But their cruelty didn't stop there. They dragged Kaveri before him, intent on assaulting her while forcing Pushpa to watch, helpless and unable to intervene. As the thugs laughed and celebrated their impending victory, Pushpa's patience finally snapped. Though bound, he used his teeth and sheer willpower to fight back. Defying all logic, he attacked with raw ferocity, biting his enemies and using their own weapons against them. Seizing a sword from one of his captors, Pushpa cut himself free and unleashed his full wrath. If he had been formidable before, now he was an unstoppable force. One by one, he slaughtered every last thug, leaving no survivors. As Pushpa was about to finish off the last remaining enemy, Bugga, a group of his own men arrived, sent under the orders of Siddhappa. Despite Siddhappa's warnings that this act could severely impact his business and relationships, Pushpa was unfazed. Ignoring the consequences, he ruthlessly ended Bugga's life. A few days after the incident, Veera finally resigned himself to the loss of the last heir of his family. Meanwhile, Mohan, filled with guilt over his past actions, arrived at Pushpa's house to offer his heartfelt apology. Though Pushpa initially refused to meet him, he later made an appearance at the wedding of Mohan's daughter, Kaveri. Just when everything seemed settled and Pushpa was ready to embrace a peaceful life, a new threat emerged. A large floral arrangement was delivered to him, only to reveal itself as a massive explosive device. And with that, the story come to an end. Moral lesson from the story: if you ever find yourself inside a shipping container for 30 days, make sure to bring snacks and a good book, because surviving on stubbornness alone might not impress the mafia. Also, always check if the wood you're stealing is real or just painted wood, or you might end up looking like a fool in front of reporters.